We got a few cool news stories, and I also want to review a couple of tracks, kind of go over them very briefly. So let's dive into it. What's up, everybody? Richard back today with the third episode of the Warped Report. Now, as you'll see, I am by myself, and going forward, actually, the entire show will be just me solo, and I'll fill you guys in on that for a little bit. Basically, what happened is I was doing the show before with a co-host by the name of Adam, who was the guitar player for my band 𝗧𝗛𝗪. Well, over the past couple of weeks, my band has actually disbanded, and along with that, some other stuff has kind of gone on. Nothing bad or anything like that. It's all amicable and whatnot, but it was just best that I proceed doing the show solo. So I look forward to doing this. I really do. For those of you that aren't aware, I actually have a degree in journalism, so this kind of stuff is right up my alley, so I really look forward to doing this. And now, so the goal of the show, too, is this. I'm going to try to aim for about 10 minutes for each episode, so I don't want to keep you guys waiting any longer. I want to dive into this because we got a few cool news stories, and I also want to review a couple of tracks, kind of go over them very briefly. So let's dive into it. The first one here, the first news story here that I wanted to cover is actually kind of a feel-good story. This is really, really cool. And actually, I know this podcast is called The Warped Report, but we're going to go over across the pond now to Download Festival. Or actually, what is, the Download Festival pilot that this is called here, according to Robert Pasbani of Metal Injection. So basically, what happened was this past weekend, 10,000 metalheads in the United Kingdom finally felt some sense of normalcy. While the actual Download Festival was pushed back to 2022, a smaller test version occurred this week to help fans get back in the show. So basically what this was kind of a Download Festival light. It happened this past weekend, June 18th to the 20th in Donington Park in Leicestershire. And like we said, 10,000 fans were in attendance. But this the lineup included bands like Bullet for My Valentine, who we're going to talk about later, Frank Carter, Enter Shikari, Skindred, and a bunch of others. And then there's a quote here. It says, "This massive next step will help us understand and study the safe return of large-scale festivals with no social distancing or face masks over a full weekend," said Festival Republic's Melvin Benn previously. "The return of the full festival experience we have all been waiting for, and a much-needed return to work for musicians, backstage crew, caterers, and many more that form part of the UK's exemplary live music industry." So there's a small video here as well of them kind of going over, but this is really cool to see. I'm sure you guys have probably seen some of the videos floating around on social media that have to do with this. And like the article says, man, it's really cool to kind of see this. I mean, look, you see the screenshot. I'll go back to this real quick of you see people in the crowd. People aren't social distancing. The masks are shed for the most part, it looks like, and that's a really encouraging sign of getting back to, I guess you want to call it, normalcy. This was really, really cool to see, and hopefully this can kind of serve as sort of like a blueprint even for United States festivals over here as we get into festival season here in the summer with Blue Ridge Rock Festival, Incarceration, all these kind of, there's so many festivals over here in the US, and hopefully this will kind of serve as maybe like a little bit of a blueprint of how to successfully do it and keep everybody safe. So that was really cool to see. And now this next story that I want to discuss is talking about Trivium, and it's more specifically Matt Heafy, the front man and also guitar player for the band. Now, I know this is kind of outside of the Warped Tour scene a little bit, but I thought this was very interesting. So as you're all probably aware, musicians, or even if you watch the 𝗧𝗪𝗪 YouTube channel, or now my own solo YouTube channel, when the pandemic hit, obviously there was no shows or anything like that, so had to adapt online, whether that was YouTube or Twitch. And Matt Heafy is somebody who did that very, very successfully. So there was a story in the New York Times in which Heafy is both the focus and cover photo, and he pulled back the curtain on his Twitch world even further, according to the report, which describes Heafy as one of the most popular musicians on the entire platform. And there's a direct quote from the article stating, "In 2019 and 2020, Heafy's four-man band Trivium collected an average of $11,000 a month from the audio services, while his own Twitch channel generated nearly as much, just under $10,000, from an audience that was about 1/10 of the size." So this is super, super, super cool, super, super important. just for anybody who maybe, if you're watching this, if you're in a band or anything like that, or whatever you do. I mean, even if you're a creative at all, it's about adapting and identifying different sources in which you can not only market yourself, but also in the case of Twitch, generate some income. So I mean, that's a really fantastic way for Matt to kind of keep his household afloat and whatnot. Earning just under $10,000 a month from Twitch. That's crazy. I mean, that is a ton of money, of course. So I just thought that was a really, really cool story that I wanted to touch on real quickly. And for our last news story, we're going to talk about Atreyu, the longtime metalcore band that has been around for, man, what feels like almost 2 decades now. And this is actually, it's not a great piece of news, we'll say that, but it's Atreyu fails to make the Billboard 200 for the first time since their debut. So, as you'll see here, the Curse, which was their 2004 record, sold more than 30,000 copies in its first week and landed at number 32 on the Billboard 200. But their most recent record, Baptize, sold roughly 3,500 copies, which is 2,700 in pure sales in its first week of release in the United States, and not even, and as it says here, not nearly enough to put them to the aforementioned chart. But this is also interesting because this is the first record that Atreyu has put out, as the article points out here, without Alex, and I'm not even going to bother with his last name because I don't know how to pronounce it, who was ousted from the band in 2020. And obviously the band kind of took on a little bit of a different kind of feel, kind of a different sound. And also, this band has been around for a while, so there could be some of like that, there's just been a lot of time. And, some would argue that they peaked back in the day with like the Curse and stuff like that, or lead sales, paper anchor, stuff like that. So that's unfortunate for them. I know that obviously, I know a lot of bands would kill to do 3,500 copies, 2,700 pure sales in the first week. But for Atreyu, let's be honest. I mean, obviously it's a much different time than 2004, but when you consider that streams actually factor into album numbers now, 3,500 total, 3,500 copies, 2,700 in pure sales compared to 30,000 copies in 2004. Quite the difference there. So, yeah, I mean, that's crazy. I was pretty surprised when I saw that. I thought that they would at least crack the 200 because it's Atreyu. I thought that maybe the name itself would carry them. But now real quick, I just want to touch on a couple tracks as we get out of here. The first one I want to touch on is Bullet from My Valentine, releasing their new track, Knives, which I was pleasantly surprised by. Kind of them going back to their heavier roots. On my YouTube channel, I did a reaction to it, and I gave it a 9 out of 10, but I did that knowing that I was kind of comparing it to their more recent material, which has been, not my thing. We'll put it that way. It's been kind of like more of the hard rock spectrum, but this really kind of catered more back towards that Scream, Aim, Fire day. It was a little repetitive, but it had a nice, solid hook, not as hooky as some of their past material, but a fantastic, heavy track from Bullet for My Valentine, which brought back a lot of nostalgia. That I quite frankly, like, it was kind of cool listening to the track and be like, damn, man, this brings me back to when I used to play World of Warcraft, listening to Tears Don't Fall, or just the Poison album in itself. So that was a really cool track. And the last one here, I want to touch on an out-of-line music's own, 1056, with their track, Boy. Oh, man. And now I know that I'm on the Out-of-Line YouTube channel, so people can say, oh, he's biased or whatever. I'm not being biased here. I legitimately love this track, and to show you, I'm gonna prove it to you. I'm gonna pull up my Spotify playlist here that I curate called the Core 100, and I'm just gonna show you where this track lands for me because I take a lot of pride in this playlist, and I just thought that this track was absolutely incredible. They're actually on the cover of the playlist now, and now this song here, man, just goes so incredibly hard for the full 3 minutes, 51 seconds. So many cool effects, the whammies, the drops. Aaron's vocals are just on point in this track, and the lo-fi kind of hip-hop outro is awesome. An absolute 10 out of 10 banger. Coming off of Diazepam as well, which I also equally loved, and I'm sure that we can expect a record from these guys, hopefully at the end of the year. Maybe I can get some inside sources on that one. But anyways, Thank you guys so much for watching this week of the Warped Report. We just ran down a couple of quick news items, a couple of tracks, and we're in and we're out. All of the links to all my social media, my YouTube channel, all that stuff is down below. And I'll see you next week on episode 4 of the Warped Report.